I'm Evan Lepler, and I'm open.
We got Evan Lepler today, so we're gonna keep this brief. Uh, go. All right. Welcome to steal a catchphrase from our guest. Today we have Evan Lepler, aka the voice of Ultimate. Do you take ownership of that nickname, or are you humble about it? I'm curious.
Both. I'm very flattered by it. And for the record, I stole welcome from John Oliver on Last Week Tonight. So that is not
Wow.
original either.
Gotcha. Well, I'm stealing it secondhand from you. So yeah, welcome. We
Yeah,
are
thanks
going
for
to
having me.
ask, yeah, of course. We're gonna ask a bunch of questions and we are gonna kind of just do it at random. Does anyone have the most pressing question of the group?
Sure. Yeah. We kind of asked this to most of our guests, and we can twofold it into frisbee and play by play. But like, what's your frisbee background? How did you get into play by play and all that jazz? And yeah, just go at it.
I've definitely told these stories before, and I can be verbose and rambly, so I'll try to do it quickly. My frisbee background, I enjoyed throwing a frisbee when I was in middle school, high school, but I never really played ultimate. I never had thrown a flick or seen anybody throw a flick. And then freshman orientation at Wake Forest, I just saw a flyer in my dorm, come play ultimate on the quad, like 3 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, whatever it was. And something compelled me to go, and I had a great time and met a bunch of awesome people and played quad disc for a week, and then they're like, yeah, we're starting practices next week, bring cleats if you have them. And I don't think I traveled to college with cleats, so I went and got a friend to drive me, and I didn't have a car, and bought some cleats and was on the Wake Forest club team. Basically, there were no tryouts. The sophomores at that time basically kind of told me like, yeah, it's really fun. Tournaments are awesome. You'll probably get to play a point or two every game. Um, and then my first tournament, there were I think 12 of us there, and the senior captain literally called me on the first point of the game, and I played like not almost every point as a freshman, but I played a lot. I played way more than I expected to, and had a blast. By my sophomore year, I was virtually playing almost every point after I had learned how to throw a flick. And yeah, I mean, it became like I really went to college thinking I would be in the gym playing pickup basketball every day because I really enjoyed playing basketball. Um, and ultimate became my outlet instead for competition and staying in shape. And you know my best friends to this day are guys that I met on the quad and on that ultimate team at Wake Forest. So that's kind of how I got into ultimate and played 4 years at Wake Forest, and continued to practice with them for a few years after I graduated, even though I obviously couldn't play anymore because my job was nights and weekends, because that's what sports broadcasting is. In terms of how I got into play by play, it's what I've wanted to do my whole life. I mean, literally since I was like 7, 8 years old, and I kind of had a realization that I wasn't going to play in the major leagues or in the NBA. But I grew up watching Red Sox, Celtics, Patriots, Bruins in Massachusetts, and you know, listened to a lot of great broadcasters. From Sean McDonough to Dave O'Brien and Mike Gorman, and you know, Joe Castiglione, and there's I was fortunate to hear a lot of great broadcasters, and always just kind of really enjoyed what they did and thinking about how to call a game. And so, I mean, like I think when I was in like fourth or fifth grade, I called like a rec basketball final, like that I wasn't playing in, but that like the town television station covered. And my town had a community local access TV station that I started working for as a volunteer, when I was in 8th grade. Really before that, I was doing like some camera for them, but in 8th grade, like my first ever broadcast was high school girls tennis. I was really intimidated by these high school girls that could whack a tennis ball when I was in 8th grade. And by my sophomore year, I was the voice of the boys varsity basketball team, and the games felt like a big deal, and the gym was rocking. And those were some of the first like big games that I got to call. And my dream was to go to Syracuse because that's where all famous broadcasters mostly had gone. It was the first school I visited when I was a junior in high school, and the Newhouse Communication School was amazing. The rest of Syracuse just didn't feel like the right fit for me. So my dad had the idea to go look at Wake Forest, UNC, and Duke, like all of which were academic reaches. But I really enjoyed Wake Forest and applied early decision, and somehow got in. It was before the Chris Paul admissions boom. Like after Chris Paul and I arrived the same year, and I think admission standards, and like this is actually true, like went up significantly after like Chris got the Deeks to the Sweet 16 our freshman year. So yeah, I didn't go to a school that's known for broadcasting, but pros and cons. The cons are like I don't have this incredible alumni network of Mike Tirico and Sean McDonough and Marv Albert and Bob Costas. But at Wake Forest, I got to do stuff as a freshman for the student TV station that like folks at Syracuse had to pay their dues and really work, years to get an opportunity to do something on air as a junior. I got to do a bunch of stuff as a freshman and basically ran my own show on Wake TV as a sophomore, junior, and senior. And, thought I'd major in communications, ended up not really liking my communications class because it wasn't broadcast journalism-y. Like I had written for the paper in high school and worked for our local TV station. So I already had a good bit of experience. And, this was like the theory of transmitting messages. So to make a long story short, I ended up majoring in political science with a minor in philosophy and journalism, but, did work for Wake TV and did a bunch of internships with a sports radio station. And I did an internship with ESPN in Charlotte in between my junior and senior year. And, graduated the spring of 2007 and basically, had the goal of just trying to do play-by-play as much as I could. And, didn't really envision like making a lot of money, just kind of wanted to break even and figure it out. And here we are, 16 years later. And I don't always feel like I've made it. I feel like I am still like kind of working to prove myself. And things in the industry change. And I've had a lot of friends who have gone to do other things because it didn't work out in broadcasting. But I've been able to do it and support my family. And I never dreamed that doing ultimate play-by-play as a quasi full-time job would be a thing. But when that popped up in the USAU opportunity first, it popped up a decade ago in 2013, and then like February 2014, I got a random like tweet. It wasn't even like a direct message. It was just like Tim DeBile tweeted at me. It's like, hey, do you have some time to talk? And it was like weird, but I was like, who are you and what is this? And like I knew the AUDL existed at the time, but wouldn't say I followed it closely. That was obviously the very early days, before the 2014 season. And had some long conversations with Tim, had a couple long conversations with the commissioner at the time, Steve Gordon, talked to a lot of other people in broadcasting. But like I remember at the time thinking that like 21-year-old Evan would have been absolutely over the moon at an opportunity like this. So figured out a way to make it work, and I'm super grateful I did because I really enjoy doing what I'm doing now and feel really fortunate for the opportunity to do it because I understand how special and cool it is.
Yeah. Well, as people who watch most of the games that you call, thank you for calling them because they're a lot better with your voice over them.
That's very kind.
What I guess something I'm wondering is like when you're doing a broadcast, I mean, if it's frisbee or just otherwise, like what kind of things are you trying to do to like make it engaging or just like do a good job? Like what's your approach to sports broadcasting?
I really view myself as the caretaker for the game and all the people that care about it and take that responsibility seriously. So it's about, doing it as accurately and energized and kind of responsibly as I can, you know, call it like the most basic thing is you want to call the game. You want to punctuate the big moments, uh, and you want to tell the meaningful stories of the players and the context of why that game matters. And I think a big part of being a broadcaster is, bringing the same energy that the people that care most about it do. So you prepare, you learn everybody's names, you learn everything you possibly can about those people involved. Now, the best broadcast only use a small fraction of that information that you have. I often say like a good broadcast probably uses about 25 to 30% of your prep, unless it's a really bad game, and then you'll use more of your prep. But yeah, it's my goal is to you know do the most professional job I can, and both for the competitors and people who are involved, but also all the fans and families, and like every game is really important to somebody, like whether it's Carolina DC or Detroit Pittsburgh or like Division 3 basketball between the two worst teams in that league. That game is still really important to somebody. So as the play-by-play announcer, it's my job to make it feel important and try to elevate it. And um but I think also, like, you also need to maintain credibility. You can't just, if it's two really bad teams, you can't go on the air and say, oh, this is a huge game tonight for all these reasons. And like I've done some dogs of games, more so in other sports than ultimate, because I've been fortunate to call all the big games in ultimate. But like in other sports, I mean, I've done like late February games between like the 13th and 15th place ACC men's basketball teams at like
Tough.
9 o'clock local time. But like, still, the game I'm thinking of is a game between Pittsburgh and Wake Forest when both teams were really bad, and it was up in Pittsburgh. But like, 18-year-old Evan would have killed that game. Like,
Right.
and that's the attitude that I try to take. Like, every game is an opportunity to, have fun and have a moment and get better and engage with your analyst. I think that's another thing that I really should mention off the top. Like, a good play-by-play announcer knows that the analyst on television should be the star of the show.
Mm.
And it's a little tricky, just because I've been an analyst for ultimate, and like I do every game each week, and the analyst that I work with is not working every single week, so there's like just a little bit of a different dynamic there. But I think the best play-by-play announcer is asking good questions to bring the strengths out of the analyst in terms of their knowledge and insight and personality. And I think that's a very important job of being a play-by-play announcer, as well as engaging the right way with the people that they're working with. And it's not just the analyst, it's the producer and the director and everybody else that's part of a crew. The ultimate broadcaster, this really small family of a crew that we have that do these games every week. I'll go do a basketball game and there'll be like 20 people in the truck and 6 camera people and stats and audio too. And like, there's, sometimes 30 to 40 people on these crews that I work for, which is like, it's a daunting responsibility because most people won't ever know their names, but how I perform is often how they feel the show went, whether it went well or whether it went poorly.
Mhm.
So there's really no better feeling as a play-by-play announcer to work on a big game and then go into the truck afterwards and like everybody's in a good mood and say, hey, great job. And you guys, I mean, did a great job too. And it's a really cool feeling to make good TV with a lot of good experienced people, especially as a still relatively young play-by-play announcer that's finding my way. I've had some really special moments, after games in trucks where I think people like see me, especially. I don't think I look as young as I used to, mostly because I've probably gained some weight, like we all do as we get into our 30s and have kids and drink beer. But I think that when I was like in my late 20s, early 30s, I often look really young, and people would see like, who is this kid? And then I would do a good job, and they'd be like, oh yeah, this guy's legit. This guy's a pro. So that's always a good feeling.
Wow, that was a great answer.
That's so
I'm
awesome.
curious, do you, after like a whole game or even just like a specific play, do you have a feeling about how well you think you did? Do you come out of a game and you're like, damn, I blew that. Like I just didn't have my best game, or like are there games that you come out and you're like, I killed it. That was one of my best commentating
So
Performances.
one
performances.
hundred
Yeah.
percent, 100%. I think I've gotten to a point where I feel I'm pretty consistent. So I don't have like
Mhm.
crazy highs or crazy lows. But with that said, like, yes, 100%. What I've also found is that when I feel bad about something, it's almost never as bad as I thought it was when I go back to listen to it. Similarly, when I feel really good about something, it's almost always never as good as I thought it was. Um, but like in every single game, there are calls that you want back. Like I, I really try and like really have a strong desire to punctuate the big calls well. Like the type that, I mean, you never know when a top 10 play is going to happen. Like sometimes if a huck goes in the air, you like, oh, this could be it. But you don't think about like this could be it. You never know when there's going to be an unbelievable layout block on an
Mhm.
under, or a swing that gets popped up in the air and becomes a Callahan or whatever it may be. So you always kind of have to be ready. And I always try to punctuate the calls, spontaneously and articulately and like passionately. So like that's something I take pride in, and it's important to me. But with that said, every single game, there's calls that I want back. I mean, I I think the one call I most want back from this season so far is Ben Yacht's overtime sky
Mm-hmm.
in the New York DC game. Like again, it wasn't bad, but like it was such an unbelievable play. The way he was jostling with Tyler Monroe, and maybe Ben Ort was the other defender. Yeah, or I think it was Ort because he like literally fell on top of Ort.
Mhm.
And like in that moment, you kind of like punctuate it, and then like I'm trying to like think of the right word to capture this, and I think I said like to the ceiling or something, and I immediately wanted it back, and it was fine. But that's the type of thing that like sticks with me, and like I kind of cringe when I go back, and after every single game I'll go back, and initially I'll just scroll through the AUDL's YouTube and see like what highlights they posted and how did they
Mhm.
sound. And usually I feel good about most of them, but there's always one or two that you want back, and that's kind of the you know the quest to try to keep doing better and do the best job I can, because I certainly don't feel like I have mastered ultimate play by play, like not even close. There's the way we pace the game and engage with the analyst and punctuate big moments and use language. I still feel like I am both experimenting and contemplating certain ways that it can be better. And yeah, I kind of forget the question now, but
No, I think you answered it perfectly. And if it makes you feel any better, two of us were at that game, so we didn't even hear
I
your
don't
call.
even know what you said.
I was just watching that game, going like, "Damn, look at what Ben Yat just did."
Yeah, that was a crazy play.
Yeah,
One
it's
of many
easy.
in that game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess similarly, do you have like a call you go back to of yours that you think was really good that you like think of and you're like, wow, I said the right thing there?
Um, I don't know if there's a call that I think is like really, really good. I don't know. I mean, I think I've been good on a bunch of calls, but like really, really good. I mean, the first thing that popped into my mind was the Will Chen throw from the 2016 Madison Seattle semifinal,
Mm-hmm.
right? But like, I don't know if that was as much good as I just kind of like expressed the awe and disbelief of that throw. And honestly, I think that was a great call because Chuck Kindred immediately said, "Holy smokes!" Like perfect timing, perfect. We call that a blurt in the industry. That's like one of those things that like you would hear, if you're like on the NCAA basketball, like when the show's starting, you'll hear, Ian Eagle like unbelievable, or Kevin Harlan like I don't believe, just like that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That holy smokes in that moment was, I thought, made like listening back to it, I was just like, damn, that was perfect timing. Like he didn't step on me, but he continued to express the disbelief of that particular play. Were y'all in like elementary school when that play happened?
I think that was freshman year of
Yeah,
college.
freshman in college, I think.
You've
Yeah.
seen the highlights.
Maybe. Yeah, no, I think
If you,
I think that would have been. It might have been senior year of high school.
have y'all gone back to watch that entire game?
Mm-mm.
I went over to so we went to Tulane and we were buddies with Chance Cochran, who plays on Bravo right now.
Sure.
And he had us over to his apartment and like he sat me, I can't remember who else was with us, but like he was like a couple years older than us and he sat us down and like made us watch every play of that game. So I did that like freshman year of college, like
It
around
You
when
didn't
it
invite
happened.
me?
I guess you weren't invited, Sam. My
Yeah, we were
bad.
if you haven't seen that game, like 2 hours and just enjoy it. It's
Yeah.
even knowing what happened there, like it's not just that it was exciting and a great comeback, but like there are so many incredible plays in that game that it's I think the greatest game in the history of the league, like, and just because of everything, like obviously the stakes, the crowd was phenomenal, but like the first and second quarters of that game deserve to be on ESPN Classic as well. That station doesn't exist anymore, and hopefully you're all old enough to get the reference. But when I grew up, there was this station called ESPN Classic, and they would show old games, and it was like fun to watch one of your teams play because like you didn't have DVR in the 90s, that sort of thing. But yeah, so that kind of first popped into my mind just because I've heard it a bunch. There's some other championship weekend moments that I'm sure I'm proud of. There are other moments at college and club nationals. I don't know if there's like a particular call,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, like the Revolver Colony Indoor World Championship game in 2018, I felt pretty good about afterwards. Did that game with Ian Toner, and like it was the indoor final. That was just like so unexpected and a really quality game. I mean, look, I've been super fortunate to call a lot of great games, and after learning this past weekend that Mitch Dengler, the observer for USAU, has like counted all the games he's observed. I haven't started it yet, but I feel like I kind of want to go back to 2013 and just like start making a spreadsheet and see if I can catch up to like know and figure out how many games I've done. The USAU and AUDL stuff is easy. The tough part will be remembering like which games I called at like Beach Worlds in 2015 and in Dubai, which was just such a whirlwind that I like remember a few games, but know there are games that I would have very little recollection of because they're short and I didn't know what I was doing and I was jet lagged and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, Seattle, Madison. If y'all haven't watched, or if any of your viewers haven't watched, the 2016 semifinal is unbelievable. I mean, I really like. If I think of best games in the AUDL that I've done, I think of the two New York, Raleigh, Carolina regular season games that both went to double overtime. Like the championship game between them was great too, especially for Flyers fans. But those two regular season games just were, I mean, the last minute or two of regulation and overtime just were full of twists and turns. And then that 2016 semi. And look, there have been a lot of good games that I could mention, but I think those are the first few that come to mind. And it's cool that, like, I mean, y'all and many others didn't follow the league in 2014, 2015, 2016, but there is this treasure trove of film and moments to go back and enjoy. It's like during the pandemic when I went back and watched seasons of Survivor that I hadn't seen before, because they were all on like Amazon Prime, and I like Survivor, but I had missed like 10 seasons. It's like, oh, these exist. That's really cool. So hopefully they're like young high school, college age Ultimate fans who are like just discover the AUDL and go back and get into it, because there's like that's one of the greatest things about the AUDL is that there is that infrastructure to get back into. You can go look at the stats for those games and see the results and compare them to what's happening now and see where that player what went on to do for the next 5-10 years. So that's like one of the really cool things about the AUDL that I'm proud to be a part of.
Yeah.
One of my regrets is that the Breeze, while I was in high school, played at my high school's field, but I just didn't I played Ultimate, but I didn't really follow the AUDL. That's been like somewhere 14, 15, 16, somewhere in there. And they would play at my high school field, and like the biggest thing I would care about is like if they won, Papa John's would give you a discount if you use the code Breeze50 and they won. And I was like, oh, let's go see if they're going to win this game. And it's like, maybe they were playing Toronto. Like maybe they were playing like a great game. And now like looking back on, I would have just had like no idea what was going on except for like, am I going to get pizza?
Joe, the funny thing is like NBA teams still do that to this day.
Yeah. Wiz 50.
Oh, yeah.
I know about the Wiz 50.
Breeze 50 does not work anymore. It was just back then.
I like that you tried it recently.
I think the Breeze have partnered with Domino's now, I think. So
no way.
Try it over there. I've got the season tickets where you get free beer and free pizza. So I know all about their pizza switch of the last year. I feel us switching over to talking about Ultimate a bit more. So I've got a question that will hopefully bridge it a little bit, because I've got a broader broadcasting element to the question and then a specific Frisbee related sub question. So the broader question is, when you're calling a game and a ref or observer makes just an awful call, do you try to be political about it a little bit, or do you just kind of, are you upfront about it? Is there like a code of play-by-play commentators to be a little nicer about it? And then sub question, do you think that Josh Singleton was in on the back of the end zone clap catch in the semi against Vermont this weekend? That was the play of the game, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty clearly in on the replay, wasn't he?
I thought he was in.
I don't know. I wasn't sure.
Like it was one frame.
It's
and
close.
It just depended on when he stopped the rotation of the disc. And the next frame, his foot was up, but he clearly had stopped rotation.
I thought he was pretty clearly in on the replay, but it's also impossible. It was one of those that like wouldn't be overturned because we didn't have the camera right on the line.
Yeah, totally.
I think if you don't be honest with what you see and what happened, especially via instant replay, you're doing your viewers a disservice. You need to be genuine. So I think, look, the officials, observers, referees, whatever, they're humans. They make mistakes. You can say a call was clearly wrong if it was, without saying that like the person was wrong. Like you can attack the call, not the person, if that makes sense. Now, the only time I've attacked a person
Oh,
when they didn't make a call. And I don't think this referee was very happy about how I called them out and attacked them. But it was like a play on the sidelines, and the referee was standing right there, and they just didn't make a call. And I was like, you have to make a call. That's your job. Like in or out, just that's what you got to do. So I think that's the only time, and like that's the only time I feel like I maybe crossed a line. But like if you can't be honest with your viewer and defend something that's clearly wrong, but you could also defend the call even if it is wrong, or defend the person. Like, look, it's understandable. That's a really tough call. And look, I think I was actually, it's funny you asked this because I've been thinking about this, especially in the aftermath of the Derek White tip-in in Game 6 of the Celtics Heat. We don't need to talk about Game 7. The Kevin Harlan didn't really say anything. The Celtics radio announcer Sean Grandy waited and didn't say anything because the officials didn't make a call. They didn't signal good or no good. They came together, and like then I think Zach Zarba signaled good, and then Harlan went nuts. And I actually haven't heard Grandy's call, but I follow Sean Grandy on Twitter, and I read Richard Deitch's interview with Kevin Harlan on The Athletic, and Sean Grandy talked about like the play-by-play announcer doesn't decide when the game is over. The officials decide when the game is over.
right.
So part of calling the game is calling what the officials do. That is part of the game. And I thought about it in the context of this past Saturday in Madison, the crazy sequence at the end of the third quarter where Chicago turned it over and then Madison gave it right back on the goal line, and Jake Zizlicki caught it and his foot was on the line in the end zone, so he wasn't in, and then he flipped it up. If there was a more inexperienced sideline official in that moment, it could have been a disaster. Maybe they don't signal clearly not in a timely manner. Maybe they don't signal the goal in a timely manner. But Becky Ladone, who's a friend who I've played Frisbee golf with a bunch of times, she's a really good referee and has been like the primary or trail on-field referee many times, but I don't think she was like initially planning on working this game. So she was just on the sideline, and she did a fantastic job in that moment of signaling, not in, and then immediately signaled goal. And like the thrower released the throw with literally 1 second left or something akin to 1 second left. So it was super close. And if she doesn't authoritatively make that call, then I don't nail that call as a play-by-play announcer. And I feel like I nailed that call, and I was proud of it, and it wouldn't have happened without Becky. So like thinking about that in the context of that Celtics Heat finish where the officials didn't make a call, and like I honestly, I kind of wanted to write about that and like give Becky a shout out on Tuesday, and just didn't have the bandwidth and didn't write as much on Tuesday because I was traveling back from nationals. But I'm glad I mentioned it here because I do think it's like, if any referees are watching this, like making strong, authoritative, punctual calls like that is like, yes, you want to be right too. Obviously you want to get that right. But that like, as a play-by-play announcer, that's something that I really appreciate in the AUDL, and like really am fascinated by listening and reading the best play-by-play announcers in the business talk about that dynamic as well, because that's like something that probably most people would have never thought about. But I drove away that night being like, Becky really nailed that. And because of that, I was able to nail that. And I haven't told her that yet, but I should send her a text and say thanks, because she did a really good job.
That's awesome to hear. Kind of similar along those lines. Who's your like dream color commentator co-host? Like anyone working right
I mean, like in the ultimate world or in
No,
like any
like
sport?
like
Anything,
Mike
anything.
Green, like anyone.
And on top of that, I'll add to that, like any sport, any game you could pick
Mhm.
in any color,
Sure.
like any co-host.
Yeah. So you mentioned Mike Breen. Like, I think Mike Breen's fantastic. I've got game one of the finals DVR right now. I'll go watch it when we're done, but no rush. Um, I would love to meet him and have lunch with him or have a beer with him, but like I'm a play-by-play announcer and he's a play-by-play announcer. So I think the two of us working together would be superfluous. So I am huge fans of many, many play-by-play announcers that I could talk about at length. But in terms of like who I would really want to work with, so I mean, Bill Walton is
Oh my,
unbelievable.
that's what I wrote down as
That's-
I wrote this question down in our Google Doc, and I said Bill Walton in parentheses with a little question mark.
So the funny thing is, like, one of my best friends has worked with Walton many, many times. And so I've never met Walton, but like have like sort of a 1 degree separation from Walton. And then somehow the Growlers, I know he lives in San Diego, and the Growlers got to know him and brought him a disc and like it would be unbelievable like to do an ultimate game with Walton and just wind him up and let him go. My buddy is the TV announcer for the Chicago White Sox, amongst a million other things. And there was a series a few years back in Anaheim, playing the Angels, where like he had like 3 different guests like from Southern California. And one of the games was Walton, and like they wore tie-dye White Sox shirts. And like Walton is just, he's so brilliant and creative and goofy and like out there, obviously, but like I understand why some people don't like him, because like if he's calling your team's game, he can get a little bit over the top and off the beaten path by talking about the nature and the topography of the Pacific Northwest and that sort of thing. But like he actually, I also, in addition to this one friend I'm talking about, another friend of mine who's a producer at ESPN has like produced Bill Walton and said that like yes, he has all that stuff, but like he also really prepares to know the teams and like know the stuff that my buddy producer friend had prepared in terms of like, okay, we're going to focus on this and we're going to spot shadow him and we're going to show his, ability to run in the open court. And then we're going to show his rim protection and blah, blah, blah. And like a lot of color analysts who do college basketball would just be like, yeah, I don't need to study it. I'll follow it as it goes. And like Walton, like, no, I want to see it and I'm going to be on top of it. And, so I think some of that like real acumen can get lost with him. But yeah, I say Walton also because like it feels not totally unrealistic. Like maybe he shows up to the San Diego Salt Lake game that I'm scheduled to call on July 1st, and we have him in the booth for a quarter or all night long. And like I feel like if that had a chance of happening, my buddy would put in a good word. So like I wouldn't just be a total stranger, even though I would be. So yeah, I mean that's the first thing that I thought of. Obviously, there are a lot of really sharp, interesting analysts that are out there, but I'd say as a play-by-play announcer, like I'm a bigger fan of play-by-play announcers. Like would it be fun to do an ultimate game with Tony Romo? Like, yeah, I think it would be fun to do an ultimate game with Tony Romo or a football game with Tony Romo. I understand all the criticism that's been thrown at Romo over the past year, but I still think he does a very good job. And he just like, it's hard when people think being a play-by-play announcer is hard. Like, yes, there's an element of repetition and developing your style and polish and comfort on camera and on the air, but like I have so many reps at this point. Like I think being an analyst is really, really difficult because like you can never know like every single team in the league as well as like the most diehard fans of that particular team. Um, you know, like if you're a local person, it's a little bit different, obviously, but I'm talking about like a national, NFL or NBA person. And, you know, I don't know why I started going down this road of defending Tony Romo, but it's, I think the point I was going to make was like the further you are away from competition, harder to have the feel that you did when you were just a year out. And look, I think that's a real thing for the ultimate folks that I work with as well. Like in the last couple of years, like terminology is changing, style of play is changing. Like, and to be a really good analyst, you need to stay on top of that. You can't just like, well, back in my day, here's what we did. If you want to be the best, you need to, enlighten what is happening now. And that's hard. It takes a lot of work. It requires talking to a lot of people and having access, and like you can't really shortcut that type of study and preparation to develop the expertise you need to not just fake it, because it's pretty easy to fake it, but in order to like really be super solid, it requires a lot of work. And look, by the play by play does as well. But it's a different type of preparation for play by play. Like I'm more worried about like noticing statistical trends, and this guy has scored a goal in 35 straight games, and this guy, his father won a world championship, and all the different nuggets that you can drop in. But like I want my analyst to like tell me what is happening and why it's happening and what they can do to change it and that sort of thing. And like you can't look that up, you can't fake that. It's a different kind of knowledge and expertise. And I think I work with a lot of good analysts that work hard, and it's fun to watch them do their thing. But it's also, I acknowledge, hard for them at times because most of the analysts I work with in the AUDL have like other full-time jobs, and whereas I am kind of doing this full time and this season, and talking to everybody as much as I can. So it's a little bit of a different dynamic, but it's I'm grateful for all the people I get to work with, and maybe one day Bill Walton will wax poetic about the majestic flight of the Frisbee, and it would be unbelievable. It's like he's so tall. Like, I mean, I've like Mike Jaminski, who I work with, is really tall too, and I just look like a dwarf standing next to him. And like we've like done open, it's much better when we're sitting down next to each other as opposed to standing next to each other. But just like like seeing him in a hotel lobby and shaking that guy's hand, it's just like monster. Like it's a different species of human being. It's crazy. So yeah, but who knows? Like Walton doesn't seem all that far fetched, so maybe it could happen.
Him in for Growlers game. Who knows? If we're good at anything, it's campaigning random things on Twitter. So we could. I don't know if that would hurt your case or help, but if you want
to, we'll do our best.
Yeah. Oh.
It's funny you mentioned Tony Romo. When you first said that, the first thing that crossed my head was like him like sitting alongside you and be like, all right, Evan, Jeff Babbitt, he's going to the front cone right here. Watch it. And then he predicts it. It's like, yeah, that'd be pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like my 4-year-old daughter might be able to predict that though.
Yeah.
That's
I wonder how quickly someone like Romo could pick up like the beats of like a Frisbee game. Like he could probably pretty quickly figure out what's going on, but that'd be interesting to see. Just get like a totally non-Frisbee person to be in the booth. That'd be kind of, I'd be curious to see that.
Yeah, I mean, how long does it take to learn the rules of a sport? Like, if I went to broadcast cricket next week, like how long would it take me to like sound professional and figure it out? Like, I feel like I could watch some cricket on YouTube and then figure it out, like if I really wanted to. Yeah. Now in terms of like being an expert analyst, that's a whole other thing, obviously. Yeah. But I mean, as a play-by-play announcer, again, it's very different. Like I'm grateful to do a lot of different sports, and I've called, virtually every sport you could think of. I've probably done once or twice, and in its most basic form, it's describe what you see. and describe it as it happens and know something about what it means and who's involved and why it matters, and then describe what you see with energy and passion. And if you do that and the viewer, if it sounds like you care, then the viewer will likely care. If it sounds like you're bored and indifferent, and then the viewer will probably be bored and indifferent. So that's broadcasting.
I've got a question kind of going away from broadcasting, but as someone who's watched like all of the high level frisbee in the last few years, we've kind of noticed not a lot of parity going on in the college level or the AUDL level. What do you think separates teams like Empire and both men and women's UNC from the rest of the teams in the country?
I mean, obviously the number one answer is talent. It's kind of boring just to say that, but when we do a list of the top 25 players in the league, it's not that controversial that 4 of the top 5 were Empire guys. Oscar Williams, Yacht, Babbitt, and I think John Randolph is on his way to joining that company in the future, and that doesn't mention all the other guys they have that are first class players and all-star caliber players too. But at the same time, talent doesn't do it by itself. It requires practice and chemistry, and the best group of players doesn't win, the best team wins. I've heard that cliche from coaches many, many times. Usually the coaches of good teams say that because they don't want to think that they're just going to waltz to a win because their players are really good. With UNC, it's pretty similar to that. I mean, with UNC, I'd say it's like talent and depth. Obviously the Empire have pretty good depth too. Mike and Ryan Drost are kind of afterthoughts on the New York Empire right now, and they're the 2 leaders in blocks in AUDL history that both are still averaging a block or 2 a game. Just have the unbelievable knack for getting their team possession, even in their 30s and juggling their professional lives and all that. I mean, I've definitely thought about the North Carolina thing a good amount the past 4 or 5 days for obvious reasons. It feels so routine for me to broadcast UNC at college nationals. This was my 10th year doing it at broadcasting at college nationals. Each of the last 9 years, the UNC men have been in the semis. 7 of those 9 years, they've advanced to the final. 5 times they won, 2 times they lost in the final. They lost to Colorado in 2014 and Brown in 2019, but they won 5 times. So and then the women, just the last 3-4 years have been in the semis every year in the finals. Obviously, they're talented, they're deep, they're cohesive. I mean, look, I can talk all I want about the systems and stuff, but it's just they're really good players and they really care. And college ultimate players tend to be pretty bought in because that's the most important ultimate they're going to play. And making it to nationals is a big deal, and winning a championship and being in the semis and finals, it really matters, I think, to everybody that gets the opportunity to do it. And there are a lot of really good ultimate players out there playing the AUDL and playing an AUDL All-Star game that never played in the semis or finals of college nationals. So they certainly don't take it for granted. They play really well. I think it's good to have dynasties and to have great teams. Hopefully, and I'm not rooting against North Carolina, but I want to see someone beat them now, mostly because I want to see someone take their game to that level.
Yeah,
I went into both games on Sunday really hoping that UMass and Colorado would give them great games. UMass lost 15-12. That's a respectable final score, but it never really felt all that much like they were in the game after they got broken those first few times. And the Colorado women had opportunity. I said to Katie Killeber before the game, I'm they can't fall behind. If they can get the first break of the game, they'll have a chance. And they had break opportunities on their first 2 points first 2 D points and couldn't get them. And then, at 6-5 or 5-4 got broken 6 times in a row. And that was the game. But like, I don't want to overcomplicate it. I mean, I could start listing names of all the good players on those teams, but y'all don't need me to do that. They're really talented. They're really good. They play well together. And good for them. They earned it. They deserve it. I feel the same way about the Empire. Like, you can tell how much it means to them with how much they put into it. And like, yes, they have a lot of stars, but they also have some really interesting role players that like came out of nowhere, like John Lithio or, Charles Weinberg to some extent. Charles, was a good college player and I think went to nationals with Delaware, I think, but like, wasn't a household name during his time with Minnesota and just kind of slots in. And, Solomon Rushmeyer Bailey is another guy that, was on a college championship team, but like was overshadowed by Mac Hecht and John Randolph. And, the fact that he is like a super important handler for them too. It's cool to see what they've built. And they create a really high standard that other teams, if they want to win, have to get to. And, it's not easy because they're putting resources into it. And, like they practice once a week and their coaches travel from far and wide to go to those practices every week. And that's something that they really value. I'm very curious to see if, the Empire will continue to, like, obviously they're going to the playoffs. We know that. Before the season started, I didn't think they would go undefeated. And I still kind of feel that way. I think that they could lose at home to Atlanta. More likely, I think they'll lose at least one of those altitude games at Colorado and Salt Lake, just because those could be incredible atmospheres. And, playing back-to-back games at altitude when you never play in altitude, like, can really hit you. Plus, those are talented teams that have, world-class players of their own. But, it's New York has set a new standard, and just like the North Carolina college teams have. And it's as like a play-by-play announcer, I don't really root for one thing or the other. I just root for great games. Like you root for the story as a broadcaster more than any particular team. So I think like there's something to be said for like New York going undefeated again. That like would be a good story for them, but like in terms of keeping everybody engaged and believing that they can be beaten, like it would probably be a better story if they took one on the chin going into championship weekend, or got upset at championship weekend. Like I think we'd have a different perspective of the Empire right now if the Flyers hadn't beaten them in the 2021 final in DC. Because then this New York team would be 3 straight championships, and it would be like, oh, they can't lose, like no one can beat them. But number one, like defending a championship is hard in a lot of ways. That's one thing that makes what UNC has done just so impressive. Talked a lot with Brian Jones about this, like who defended a championship with Pony and coached the Empire to the championship and then stepped aside. He would have coached in 2020, and then after the pandemic, yada yada. But he, there's just like a different feeling and fire. And, the fact that New York needed overtime against DC and Philly, like as I wrote on Tuesday, shows that they're not invincible. Like, and I think they will. I mean, I'd be very surprised if they lost at Boston this week, but, it would be a heck of a story if Boston beat New York and kind of changed the paradigm of what we thought about this Glory team. So I think you kind of root for the story, but then also process what happened and, kind of generate the narrative in your mind from there.
I would love Boston to beat them because that would shake up our tier list that we do every week in an insane way.
We wouldn't know what to do. That would be, I actually kind of hope that doesn't happen.
We've had Empire in a tier of its own, like for like a whole year now. And Boston like is climbing just because they're undefeated, but that'd be crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, the whole point of power rankings is like to not be about the record, right? It's
Yeah,
about like
exactly.
where
Yeah,
you are
that's
in
what
that
we've been
moment.
saying.
So
and
People on Twitter get so mad at us because they'll be like, the Shredder 4-0, like, why aren't they an A tier? And we're like,
they
they haven't played anybody, like, so I'm glad that
people on Twitter get mad.
yeah, shocking. I
Like
know.
you said this like a long time ago, but it's like we have no idea how to grade this Philly team because they took Empire to OT, they play Breeze to a 1-point game, and then they let the glory come back, and it's like
they barely beat Pittsburgh,
and they play Pittsburgh to a 1-point game.
Yeah,
did you watch the Pittsburgh game? I went on a rant last episode. I don't have to bring that back, but I was so disappointed in Philly in that game. So I don't know. But Ryan, your question about that, I didn't want to cut you off, but
I forgot where I was going with it. But it's just like, yeah, but Philly.
What's up with Philly? What is going on?
What's up with Philly is my question.
What is up with Philly? I'll feel better about like having a really strong opinion after I see them in person on Saturday. But my sense is, they're young and athletic and inconsistent and don't really know how to win against good teams because they haven't. I don't think, like, even last year when they had their best season in quite some time, like, they played good teams close, but they didn't beat good teams. It's been a very long time since Philly has beaten a team with a winning record.
Yeah.
Frankly, you could say the same. Like, I don't know if Boston, in their time in the league, which isn't that long, but like, I don't think they've beaten a team that's finished the season with a winning record, which is one of the reasons I'm skeptical about their game against New York. But maybe, they haven't done it until they've done it. So, and it's going to happen eventually. They do have talent, and doesn't match New York's, but on the right night, they're certainly closer to doing so. Yeah, Philly, their team is really bought in, which is one of the things I really like about them. Like, you can feel that, and like, part of that is like their social media, which is obviously like, take it for what it's worth, but they're together, they're bought in. I learned from some of the players that after they blew that Boston game, they had a players only meeting in the locker room after that game. And I talked to the coach of the Phoenix, Roger Chu, earlier today, in fact, and he talked about that players only meeting and how, that like reinforced different accountability and winning for each other. And, a week after that players only meeting, they had a fourth quarter lead on New York. Now, they didn't win the game, but they felt much better about how they played. So, they should have beaten Boston in Boston up by 7. Now, Boston shouldn't have been down by 7 in that game. They were trash in the first half, and I'm not afraid to say that. But it's like the East Division is hard with New York and DC being as determined and talented and committed as they are, and Philly, like, I'm not sure, like, they have a lot of good players, but I don't know if you're taking too many guys, from their top 7 ahead of anyone on New York or DC's top 7 if you're just ranking top players. So again, I think it, can boil down to talent at times, but the coaching and chemistry and culture and all that matters too. So I'd be surprised if they beat Carolina on Saturday, but they've got a great opportunity. It's the second night of a back-to-back for the Flyers, and they've played pretty well against good teams. They probably wish they had gotten the Flyers of 4 weeks ago instead of the Flyers from now that are all of a sudden full and kind of have their top group for the most part together. But Philly has not been successful in the AUDL for the vast majority of my time covering the league. They made the playoffs last year as a 500 team. Certainly progress, especially starting the season the way they did, for them to stay together and battle and get some of the wins that they had. It showed progress, but, I don't think, like, who did they add to last year's team that's going to help them take the next step forward from a talent standpoint? Like,
Right.
with all due respect to CJ Colicchio, he's not going to put them from being 6-6 to championship weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I like CJ, but so yeah, it's they're the underdog, but they're a feisty underdog, and just like Boston, one of these days they're going to knock off one of these top teams. I mean, Roger Chu said today, Charlie Eisenhood, who's calling the game with me, was on the call, and he's like, how do you look at this game as a must win? Like, what's the roadmap for you? And Roger's like, well, we want to win every game. Like, I look at our schedule and I think we could win every game we have left on our schedule. Like, I don't think that's out of the question. And, if you think about it, like, they've already played at DC and at New York. They've already played New York at home. So, like, their toughest game left is, other than this Carolina game, DC coming to Philly, where they played them tough. It was a 1-goal game last year. They lost basically at the buzzer. Yeah. And then the trips to Canada, which are, Roger also said that, like, there are no easy games for us. We need to have the mindset, like, because Charlie had been like, well, if you beat the Canada teams and you beat Boston at your place, like, that would put you at X number of wins. And he's like, well, like, yes, we could do that, but we're not counting that at the moment. So yeah, I again, that's a lot of rambling about Philly. I think I'll have a better feel for them after I see them in person. I am bummed they're not going to have Alex Thorne on Saturday, and he's an important kind of stabilizing veteran thrower for them. So especially against a team like the Flyers, that's going to hurt. But Jordan Ryan hasn't had the start to the season that he did last year. They really need him to pick it up and stretch the field with his throws and be able to be reliable in the backfield for offensive resets. Really, their issues have all been on offense. Like, their defense has been super competitive, and Trifolis and Paul Owens are like all AUDL defense caliber guys at kind of the tip of the spear of their defense. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing them. It's like, I've done Chicago Madison a lot. I've done New York DC a lot. I've never done Carolina Philly. It's only happened once before. This is the first time Carolina's ever gone to Philly. So that in itself is interesting and new, and like a new chapter for the league and for my AUDL broadcasting career. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
We'll definitely be watching for sure. Yeah, we've talked about Philly at a lot at this point, but something we were talking about last week was, like, we were hoping that James Pollard could kind of be more of a factor on their offense, because he can just kind of take over a game. And it felt like, especially in that Pittsburgh game, I think he led the team in assists, and it was like, this kind of a guy who should be, you should find him in the end zone more often than not. So it was a little, I think that could kind of be like a key for their success moving forward. But
yeah, the thing Roger said today that was most interesting to me about Pollard was that he said James's worst game of the year by far last year was the playoff game. And if you remember, he got off to a really good start.
Mm-hmm.
He was bombing some hucks. Yeah.
He bombed some hucks. He was like, they were kind of letting him get open under and trying to make him into a thrower, and he was on fire. And as was his issue at times last year, his turnovers could mount pretty quickly if the defense made some adjustments, and they did. And I know after that game, like, Roger and James had a long talk about, here's what we need to be better at and improve at. And James has taken that to heart. So yeah, I mean, like, he's not the only guy on their team that needs to play well, but he certainly is kind of the alpha of that O-line. Him and Greg Martin and Sean Mott. I mean, those are three really good players to be together. They just need to, prioritize valuing the disc. And I'm not saying they need to abandon their identity as shooters and playmakers, because that's a huge part of who they are as well. But against the best teams, you need to be a little bit more choosy, because you can't just huck it deep on Antoine Davis or Jeff Babbitt or Ben Yott or Ryan Drost or et cetera. You know what I mean? Like there's too many athletes to go up against. It's kind of similar story with the Flyers this week. So we'll see.
We've talked a lot about Philly, so I'm gonna move over from that for now. I've kind of got a 2-part question, and the first part is, who is your too early to call MVP of the AUDL? And the second part is, when the season does end, how does like the MVP and all of those awards, like who picks those, and
Great
how
question.
do we as a podcast company like get involved?
We're media.
How
We're Frisbee media.
how do we get a vote?
Yeah. Because last year we did our own awards, and we were very similar to what the AUDL put out like 4 months later.
And remember, our friend Everest is not a rookie anymore, so you can actually trust us with our votes now.
Exactly.
So Everest is not my number one MVP, but maybe a first team all AUDL. So 49 AUDL games played through 5 weeks. There are 13 games each of the next 2 weekends. So I did the math earlier. I think that means, so like this is week 6. After week 7, we'll have played 75 of the 144 regular season games. So I imagine after week 7, me and Adam and Daniel will do our midseason award picks. So that's the precursor to say I've started to think about like who is in that conversation. I think so. I mean, the first name that is on the tip of my tongue is Jeff Babbitt, but
Of course.
I don't think that's a sure thing by any means. I think that there are I think it's easy to pick Babbitt because of what he has done in the big moments against good teams. The off the beaten path name that I have in my mind is Jacob Miller from Salt Lake.
My fantasy team.
I wrote him down on my short list here.
He's had a fantastic start to the season. Like there are other guys on New York that you could pick. Brett Holzmeyer is probably, like, after the first couple of weeks, he certainly was. And like, I don't want to say like he's dropped off. He just hasn't been like as front and center. But I think that's part of by design with that Atlanta team. And there are teams in the Central Division that have played 2 or 3 games, so it's hard to know right now. I mean, like, I don't think Nethercutt is the MVP of the league, but he's probably on the short list for just how solid he has been. So I mean, like, if I desperately had to pick right now, I'd probably say Babbitt, but I also I go back and forth on like how much I should think about the stats and how much I should just think about like what I've watched and seen. And with Babbitt, like it's sort of both. But like, how many years did Cameron Brock lead the league in goals and like never won MVP? So like, leading the league in goals doesn't make you the MVP, which isn't to say you can't be the MVP leading the league in goals. And I don't know if we didn't give Cam Brock enough credit or still don't, or there's probably arguments for both sides of that. It's I think Cam acknowledged in those days that like he like wasn't the best player on his team. Like, Keenan Plew was the most important player on kind of those old times Alley Cats teams, and now it's probably like Keegan North, Keenan and Keegan. But I think more and more, just because the stats have become so ubiquitous and it's easy to look and kind of use them to justify arguments, which is what what is great about, like, I love having all the stats we have. It helps to frame certain things and helps to, characterize it and quantify it, as opposed to just, using artsy language to talk about a guy's impact. So yeah, I think, if I probably would say Babbitt right now, but I don't feel that strongly about it. And I just started thinking about it the past few days because I know, a week from Monday or Tuesday, I will have to deliver a midseason choice. And I don't remember who I picked as my midseason MVP last year. Maybe I picked Oscar.
I think
I
last
probably
year, I feel like last year the MVP picture had kind of already taken shape a little bit. And I feel like Oscar was already like looking pretty strong as a candidate.
I remember 2 years ago, like, we all picked Johnny Monks, and then like he wasn't really in the conversation at the end of the season. So,
right.
Like, one or two really big games can certainly change the shape of the argument in a 12-game season. But I think you also need to kind of look at the whole 12 games and think about it. As for how it is selected, it has evolved over the years. And actually, Adam Ruffner sent me a message yesterday about, I think Adam, who's fantastic, is going to revamp the postseason awards this year. I don't want to guarantee that means y'all are going to be involved, but I think the door is more open now than it has been in the past. As for how it's been in the past, I mean, there were some years when it was like just me, Adam, and Daniel voting, and then maybe Ian Toner and Charlie Eisenhood got involved in recent years as well. I know Adam is thinking about maybe like getting some coaches involved, but I haven't talked to him about that. So I talked to enough coaches to know that they know their division super well, but in terms of like league-wide awards, that could be a little tricky because, the coach of the Atlanta Hustle isn't watching too many Colorado Summit games, nor should he be. I mean, other than just being a fan of Ultimate, but it's different. So, and I know that, again, I had a message on Slack like yesterday from Adam being like, we got to talk about postseason awards. We got to revamp it and like create a better timetable for doing it. So I think that will be done in a better, timely manner this year than it has been in the past. I think like it's never been like the foremost things on our minds, and like me, Adam, and Daniel are usually just like desperate for oxygen by the time championship weekend is over. That it's like, all right, we'll take a few weeks and think about it, and then like a few weeks becomes a month, and then it's like people like y'all totally reasonably being like, when is the AUDL going to announce the MVP? And like that's super reasonable. So I think that's something that the league has recognized that we can do a better job with, and I think we will.
I relate to that a lot because we'll record an episode and then we switch off the like editing duties, and sometimes we'll like forget to post something, or like we're just like, whoops. Like, I'm tired. It's a lot of work. And we have a very small time operation, so not very comparable. Not trying to compare what we do to what you do, but
it's all good. It looks like a real heavy duty microphone you got. So
yeah, this thing's clunky. So
he does music stuff, so
a little bit.
He's got multiple reasons.
Yeah, he's in a full-time job, and he's in a band, and he does a podcast. He's doing it all.
I'm tired. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I was gonna say, I've got this trivia section of stuff. I want to see what you know, but if you have another question to go for, do that first for sure.
Well, I was gonna say, let's be conscious of we've stolen your time for a while. Do you have time for like one more question, two more?
A trivia game.
An entire long-winded trivia game that I think Joe's proposing right now.
Give me like
long-winded.
15, 20 more minutes.
Okay, excellent.
Perfect. Joe, how long's your trivia game? Like
how long? What are we signing up for, Joe?
No. Like 10 minutes.
Okay, excellent. Okay.
No.
All right.
All right. Well, if no one else has anything, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Evan Lepler trivia section of the podcast. And we're going to see which of these questions you know. That's mostly AUDL trivia. But okay. Well, first, I wanted to see if you know who the 2022 leader in turnovers was.
Oh, I know that one.
I know this one too.
2022 leader in turnovers.
Did we mention his
God.
name? Can we give him a hint?
No,
His
don't
name has
give me
been-
a hint.
Okay, no hints.
We can give him.
I mean, as soon I've looked at that so many times, and there was a time that I knew that. Is it? Oh, it was Bobby Lay with Tampa Bay.
Joe, was it?
It wasn't on Tampa Bay. It was.
Joe, was
it
it?
was
Was it
someone
our
else on
Jameis
Tampa
Winston
Bay.
award?
I believe
No.
it was our Jameis Winston award.
Oh,
Bobby was on Tampa Bay last year, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
Is that right?
It was not right, but now I'm questioning. I feel like you know better than me, but I mean, the AUDL site says it was Jonathan Nethercutt.
Oh, I thought it was Joe
Oh.
Cupid.
total
Interesting.
turnovers.
Total turns.
Okay.
Interesting.
Because
The interest that also includes the playoffs.
There you go.
Oh.
So, like,
Okay.
I got the answer wrong. I'm not saying I got it right, but I'm curious if Bobby was number one at the end of the regular season. And I've asked if we could get like regular season and postseason in separate tabs, and it hasn't happened yet. But
That should happen. That's how
So-
most sports do it.
Well,
but
the good news is
I just quickly
Sorry.
looked it up, and like it's Nethercutt 1 for throwaways, and then 2 and 3 are actually teammates on the same team,
yeah,
and that's Brian Walsh and Joe Cubit.
Cubit was going to be my other guess.
yeah.
Am I misremembering that Bobby had 1 million throwaways?
No, I mean,
My
it sounds
computer-
right. He
my
was on
computer's
Tampa
closed
Bay.
right now.
Oh,
I think you're thinking of 2021.
Yeah, you are.
Was Bobby number one in 2021?
Yeah,
He
he
was.
was.
Okay, I was a
there
year
you
off.
go. You're
with
half right.
with five more than Nethercutt had in 2022
Give him half a point. That's
well,
half a point.
the
I'll
good
allow
thing
it.
is
No, that's a zero.
most want of your these pity, Andrew. Most of these questions are not like last year who did what, so we don't have to think about playoffs included as well. Do you know who has the most assists in a single playoff game?
Nethercutt. Did
Yeah,
twice.
it is also
10.
Nethercutt. Yep, twice with 10. Do you know how many people have thrown for 100 assists in a season?
Just one. Cole Sullivan.
According to the AUDL website, it's actually 0. That was a trick question.
Damn it.
It's kind of mean, Joe.
Cole had 95 in 2016.
Yeah,
right?
I think Pavel had 97, including playoffs.
Okay.
Okay. Here's
like I have a lot of this data stored in my head, but I also have these sheets that maybe you've seen if you've seen me do a broadcast where I have all the information on these documents on my what I call them charts. So I know where the information is, so in the moment I can find it. So yeah.
All right.
Here's
one I think you can get. In 2014, who led the league in hockey assists per 100 minutes played with a minimum of 310 points played and 12 games played? What?
Joe, what?
I think he's got this.
Asked.
I believe
know you asked. It's Ryan Lee with 1.74.
Oh yeah, obviously. Why did you tell me? I was just
he was about to get it.
I'm so sorry. I know it was your first year commentating the AUDL, so I thought that was a reasonable question. My actual good question now is how many players have won a Callahan Award and an AUDL championship? Can you name them?
Huh. I mean, I've never thought about that. I gotta like go through year by year Callahan winners. So obviously John Randolph did it recently.
Yeah, I believe the only one who did it in the same year.
Jimmy Mickle
Mm-hmm.
did it. Dylan Freechild won the Callahan and won an AUDL championship. Who else? Nethercutt wasn't on the Flyers for their AUDL championship, so he didn't do it.
I wrote down two names that were like a year off. I mean, Nethercutt was 2
Ha-
years off, but the COVID year is one season away.
So I mean, who have been the AUDL champions that I'm not thinking of?
If you want to know how many, I can tell you how many more there are left.
I mean, Matt Gusho Hannes.
Yes.
I'm just thinking of recent AUDL champions. I mean, New York. Do they have any other Callahan winners besides Yacht and Oscar didn't win the Callahan. Jack win the Callahan? No, he didn't.
No,
because he played for Wilmington.
I will say there is only one left, and it is by far the hardest one to get.
Okay, give me a second.
Yeah.
AUDL champions. Someone of the 17 flamethrowers.
Somebody on the Flamethrowers was a year away. They joined a year after they won the championship, but had won at Callahan.
Just tell me. I don't want to waste your time.
It was Trent Dillon who won the first AUDL championship, and the only person to win an AUDL championship and then win the Callahan later. Huh.
Yeah, I wouldn't have gotten that.
That was the hardest
Trent
one, but
on the Philly Spinners.
Yeah, and then Jacqueline Wynn won Callahan and then joined the Flamethrowers a year after the Flamethrowers had won the championship.
Okay. Yes, I would. I mean, Kobe didn't win the AUDL championship, so that I also wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah, but 4 for 5, and I would have never ever gotten Trent Dillon.
So the answer is 5 different people have won the Callahan and the AUDL championship.
Yeah, Randolph, Gucha Hannes, Trent Dillon, Jimmy Mickle, and Dylan Freechild.
I'll use that on Saturday when Gooch does something for the Flyers.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah, you look pretty smart there. Thanks, Joe.
And I'm going to take credit for the research and not give you any credit. I'm just kidding.
That's cool.
You might want to fact check him.
I'll be at the game. I won't even hear if you give me credit or not.
So yeah, I'm bummed. I want to be doing better at this trivia because I feel like I know my stuff. But this is what's next.
Do you know which team has the highest completion percentage for their entire career?
That's
No.
Yeah, this one's pretty hard. I put this one in because it's kind of a fun answer. Is it
Minnesota?
No, it's one of the new teams. Actually, both of the new teams are 1 and 2, which is why I put this in because I thought that was interesting.
Like Colorado or like not Houston?
Yeah,
Houston.
Colorado's 1 and Salt Lake is 2.
Salt Lake is 2.
I mean, if you just think about like how many fewer turnovers there are on average in games now compared to 8-9 years ago, that makes sense. I know, in the mid 2010s, the Midwest or Central teams like always led the league in completions just because Madison would make them throw like so many more passes than other teams would. So like, and they got some blocks, but they wouldn't always get a ton of blocks. So like those teams like Madison and Chicago or Minnesota and Chicago that would play Madison multiple times would, have like 500 completions in a game when like the average is like 250, 300, something like that.
Yeah.
That's where my mind went, but no. But that makes sense. But I was thinking more when you say like all time, I'm like thinking like going back to 2014, 2012.
Yeah, some of these may be a little bit too tricky, but this one is more
Wait, can I?
to the point. Yeah.
I'll point out that. Oh, never mind. I was going to point out. Okay, I found. I went to per game, but they only have completions. They don't have completion percentage. But the wind chill are first in completions per game if you don't count the Havoc and the Lions.
The Lions. You guys know what city the Lions are from, right?
I have no idea.
No.
Really?
clue.
No idea.
Cincinnati.
They were the Salt Lake Lions.
Oh.
Oh.
No way.
Lake City Lions. Bo Kittredge had a great Callahan against the Lions. Yeah, they did not win a game, but they had a beautiful stadium. It was fun to watch their film because it's kind of like Salt Lake now. It's just beautiful.
Mhm.
That's cool. My favorite like throwback is the Rochester Dragons. Am I getting that right? The city and the team. Like that's so cool. I think the Dragons is like such a cool team name.
Yeah,
So
do you know
I'm
who
a
was
little-
the coach of the Rochester Dragons?
I don't.
Future
Would I know the
AUDL
name?
coach, future AUDL coach of the year, Brian Jones, was the
Oh,
coach
up.
of the Dragons for I think every year of the Dragons' existence.
wow. Oh,
And
CJ Colicchio was on the Dragons.
CJ Colicchio, David Ferraro, who won the club championship with Ironside in 2016, Pat Stegemeller of Sin the Fields fame was on the Rochester Dragons. They had some interesting Mitchell Steiner.
Mitchell Steiner.
I think
Yeah.
Blitz?
I think he might. I don't know if he was on the Dragons or the 2012 Buffalo Hunters, which was the precursor to the
No way.
Dragons.
Yeah.
That's
I
crazy.
should-
that
I
they had a
I should ask
team.
you guys some of this early AUDL
Yeah.
trivia. And
What you should do
we
is
know
just
nothing.
like make up something and then tell us a couple real things and try to get us to figure out which thing is fake.
Like a two truths and a lie. Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
next time.
Yeah.
Evan, can you name the 4 players last year who had over 7,000 total yards?
The 4 players with over 7,000 total
Yeah.
yards.
One had 8, and the other 3 had somewhere in the 7s.
Leandro Marks,
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Osgar,
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Kerr.
No.
No. Marks, Osgar, Chilgren.
No.
No. Nethercutt.
Yes.
One more.
And is the other
Yeah.
one have more throwing yards or more receiving yards?
A lot more throwing. He also led the league in completions.
Pavel.
Yeah.
Okay. I only got 2 incorrect guesses of the 6.
Yeah, it was pretty
That's
good.
solid.
I feel like anytime it comes to yards and like especially throwing, Kerr is up there.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan must have been 6 or 7, 5th or somewhere in the top 10 total yards.
Something
Yes.
Like that.
Yeah, looks like he's 8th.
Yeah, he's 8.
Okay.
Also, his most important stat being that he was our first guest on the show.
That's his
Because-
biggest claim to fame.
Yeah.
I mean, if you
easily.
ask him, he
Easily.
might say that.
Yeah, he was awesome. He was really fun to talk to. We got to get him back on sometime soon.
Yeah,
But,
it's that and being an NFL wide receiver like athlete.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. I've got one more that I think everybody should take a guess with, and whoever gets closest is the winner. And Evan, I'll let you decide if you want to go first or if you want to go last. But how
Okay.
many points has Cam Brock played?
Oh man. So I don't usually I look at games played a lot, but I don't usually look at points played.
I guess my trivia
So-
section was more like, can you guess this crazy fact that I found today?
Yeah.
Like that Daniel Lee stat.
I mean,
Ryan
Cam-
Lee, thank you very
Ryan Lee,
much.
sorry.
I know Cam's played like 136 games. Does that sound right? 136, 137, something like that.
138.
138.
Dang. Off the dome.
So
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
that's crazy.
So, I don't have my calculator. What's 138 times 23.2?
2,600. No, that's a guess. But yeah,
That's my answer.
3,201.
My answer is 138 times 23.2.
All right.
So what is that, Joe?
It's exactly 2,301.6.
All right. I'm gonna go
3,201.6.
3,200. I'm gonna go 3,202.
Don't do it to him like that.
Yeah.
Playing the game.
That's what the
man.
last
Playing
person
the
can
game.
guess.
Andrew, you want to go next or me?
Oh man, I was gonna way lowball it, but I'll like up mine a little bit. I'm gonna say like 2,700. That's probably way off, but
Okay, I'm gonna. I don't want to do what Ryan did, but I do want to go lower than you. I want to go like 2,684.
okay.
Congratulations, Evan Lepler. It is 3,031.
No way.
Yeah.
So I was pretty
Look at
close.
Ryan.
Shit. Yeah, you were.
Damn.
Nice
How about
try.
that? This is
Wow.
a big achievement for me.
Cam
What
will
do,
probably
what do
make
I
it.
win?
You get
I
to
don't
come
know.
back on the podcast.
Yeah, he gets to come back a second time. Talk to us
Our
for 2 more hours.
undying respect.
And you'll get Cam's
Uh,
respect because he usually watches these episodes. So he'll
Cam
make
Brock
it.
he's in the comments usually.
Yep.
Especially if we say something not if we say something that he disagrees with about the Alley Cats, he will let us know in the comments.
So
which is fun.
real quick, divide his points played by games. How many points per game is that? How close was I think in 23.2? If I had said 23, would that have been spot on?
No, 21.96. So
Okay.
yeah, so
So
just
two-
about
Okay.
22.
I overshot it.
Mm.
I thought maybe I'd undershot it, but
Well,
interesting.
Cam always talks about how hard he works, so you would think he would at least play 23 points a game.
Yeah, seriously, slacker.
Mm-hmm.
It's also like in the early days, I mean, before they changed the rule where the clock started on the pull, there were way more points per game. I mean, like 2014 through 2017, like it was pretty rare to not have 48 points scored in almost every game. Like there was pretty much a point a minute. Now it's the exception if we get to a point a minute because like 30 seconds can disappear on a pull that rolls out of bounds and someone kind of takes their time walking to midfield and the clock is rolling through all of that. So I think it's good. Like it gets our games closer to about 2 hours as opposed to like 2.5 for both TV windows and for fans in the stands. And like, if you have 35 points scored in a game, that's still plenty of ultimate for people. And, different than a club game for all the obvious reasons.
Mhm.
But, my mind went to like, in those early days, I mean, there's some crazy scores. I mean, like Detroit lost the game like 44-10.
Oh my
And
God.
I mean, I think I called like I know I did a 33-30 game in the West Coast. I think Spiders Growlers. I think I did back in the Bow days there was like a Spiders Vancouver game that was like 35-28, which like or maybe that was a Spiders Seattle game, but like think about it, that's a crazy number of points. And
Yeah.
it takes a while when that happens. Like when goals don't get scored, the game flies by. But yeah, so I think our pacing is better now. Do y'all like the new pool rule?
Yes.
Yeah, I like
do.
it.
100%.
We're seeing Callahan's now.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's exciting.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, and it makes this. Yeah, I just think anything to make things easier on the defense because every player we've ever talked to has been like, defense is really hard in the AUDL. So like
Yeah.
pinning the offense back just a little bit like has seemed to be super beneficial. But
it's a good change, good balance, and like, yeah, defense is still really hard, but you know, every game we see great defensive plays, and it's not like you can't play great defense in the league. It's just different, and you know, people like to complain and complain about the field size, but it's, you know, I think it's here to stay, and I think we've seen that defenses can control games, and I mean that New York DC game was a defensive grind.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, like it was a defensive grind, but it wasn't like a sloppy turnover fest. Like teams earned Ds, and you know, valuing the disc was super important. So it's that's not how the West Division games often feel when they're just like airing it out. And in some sense, it's more fun to watch than air it out. But there's also like the tension of a close game, a low scoring game, like when it's not sloppy because of the wind, and it's just like every window is tight, every throw is contested. You know, teams pick their spots with different strategies and traps and double teams and that sort of thing. And it, you know, I feel like we're in a pretty good space competitively, both in like the overall average quality of the games and some of the rule changes to make the game flow a little bit more smoothly. So feeling good about it.
Yeah.
Same here.
Think we're winding down, but I want to declare this question I'm about to ask the last question because of that. But I feel like we talk the bulk of our conversations when we get pretty much anyone on here, but like any big player, any club player, is about kind of the like dichotomy between traditional like club frisbee on a grass field, you know, with people clumped around the field, whatever, versus pro frisbee stadiums, marketing, making the game like more interesting to people who don't care about ultimate. I feel like people can get really like entrenched in their sort of camp in that, and I'm wondering, do you feel you belong to either side of that debate, or do you think that they can kind of coexist, or do you just stay out of it and enjoy the frisbee that there is, kind of like we do?
All of the above. I enjoy both. I think there's a place for both. I really love so much of what the AUDL has done to create a better spectator product for fans. As a spectator myself, I would rather be standing on the sidelines than sitting in the stands. So I understand that. I also think it makes a huge freaking difference if there's a track around the field, you know, and you're like in the first row of the stands, but still like 50 yards or 30 yards or whatever from the sideline, compared to like the situation in like DC or Madison or Seattle, you know, places where there isn't a track around the football field and you're not kind of separated and feeling disjointed. I think that matters a lot in terms of like the spectator experience. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy a lot of aspects of Club Ultimate, and like really enjoy Club Nationals, in part because it's a really fun weekend where at this point, like I, you know, consider a lot of the players and coaches and other people that I see there good friends because I've done it for 9-10 years. So it's fun to go watch that like super intense high level ultimate like all day for 3-4 straight days. But I enjoy a good eight. Like, I mean, the stoppages in a college and club game still bother me. It's not as much fun to watch. It's not fun to watch people talk and converse. And I understand the value in it as someone that really cherished like spirit of the game in college, as we circle back to the beginning, like that's one of the things that really drew me to Ultimate was that, you know, most people on my team and the teams we played against kind of seemed like pretty good dudes. And, you know, we're in it for the right reasons and wanted to win while earning the other teams and opponents respect as opposed to like win at all costs. So I think like that is super valuable. And I think like just because we use refs at the AUDL level doesn't mean that, you know, youth ultimate and college ultimate and even club ultimate can't still continue to be somewhat self-officiated. But like, I mean, observe Dylan Freechild loves to yell that observers are refs. In a lot of ways they are. They make active calls on certain things that makes them arbiters of the game, and they just don't always do an active job in terms of keeping the game moving along. And that's just, you know, I understand the value in it, as I said, but that's not what I want to watch. So, and at the highest level, when, you know, there is something on the line that really matters and people can dig in and it can get ugly, like you just don't want that. You want a sport that can be both fun and valuable and rewarding for the players and for the spectators. So I think, look, I think there's a place for both. Like, I think there's a place for people to enjoy both. I think there's a place for players to compete in both. I don't necessarily look at them as like competitive rivals. And I also think that while USAU for a long time, like, but we don't deal with the club leagues, like that was a lie. They did deal with the club leagues. They had conversations often, and the AUDL has, for the most part, stayed away from holding any games or playoff games on US Open weekend because that's an important weekend for USAU. And like, you know, I'm always wary about, you know, young athletes and really all athletes burning out by playing too much. I think that's a decision that various athletes can make for themselves. And, you know, the reality is probably some need to be protected from themselves, but that's, you know, if they're not playing AUDL or club, then they're practicing or playing pickup. Like people love to play Frisbee. So, yeah, I think that both can coexist, and I am grateful to be involved in both. And I just heard a sound in my AirPod that said one of my AirPods just died. I hope the other one didn't, and y'all can still hear me.
Yeah, we can. That's good timing though.
Well, my right AirPod dies much faster than my left. It's really strange. I don't know if that's for y'all as well.
Yeah, that does happen to me.
I don't understand that. I feel like they would be even, but anyway, maybe that's a signal that we should wrap it there.
Yeah, well, no, that was a great answer.
Yeah,
thank you so much for coming on and talking to us for 2 hours. This was it was super interesting to hear everything you had to say.
What time is it? I don't know what time. No, it's been fun. Thank you all for having me. I appreciate what you all do and continue to do. And like, seriously, like I know your friends having fun, but like there's some high school kid out there who's like following the AUDL through your eyes, and like that makes a difference. So just like creating content and having fun with it and doing the style that you all do, it's valuable. And I appreciate that y'all have the passion that you do. So keep it up and look forward to seeing you down the road.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Evan.
Before you tap off, one of our catchphrases that we have all of our guests do is the name of our podcast is called I'm Open. Can you just give us I'm open?
Yeah,
I'm Evan Lepler and I'm open.
Sure. I'm not gonna like yell because my family's sleeping down the hall.
No need.
Very fair, valid.
All right. I'm Evan Lepler, and I'm open.
Yeah,
Let's go.
Wow.
Thank you.
The best
Thank you
it's
so
ever
much.
sounded.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks, y'all.
Talk
Have
to
a
you
good
later.
night.
Take
See
care.
See ya.
That was Evan Lepler. This is the end of the podcast. Subscribe. I'm
Subscriber.
open. I'm open.
Subscribe. I'm open.
I'm open.
just gonna do
we can do your
turbo intro conclusion. Just tack on the beginning and end. Ready? Hello,
I'm
this is the I'm Open
open.
podcast with
I'm
Joe,
open.
Ryan,
I'm
Andrew, and Sam.
podcast.
I'm open.
All right, shut up. Please enjoy Evan Lepler. All right, that was the
Maybe
intro.
we shouldn't start the podcast with us sounding really stupid.
People are gonna click away immediately.
Yeah.
Hello. Okay, wait. Hello. Welcome to the I'm Open podcast. Start over. Didn't like it.
Again,
Didn't like it. Didn't like it. Too long.
All
too
right,
slow.
all right.
Hey, buddy. Welcome to the I'm Open
No.
podcast.